G'day mates. For less than $100 to go from a 600 watt 36 volt power head, the 40 volt with 1 kilowatt of power is clearly the better option, right? I paid $1,269 at Sydney Tools plus $155 shipping for a total cost of $1,424 Australian dollars, or about $986 US dollars. The kit came with a bonus line trimming head, hedge trimming attachment, upgraded pole saw to the one I already have, extension pole, and the 40 volt power head. Plus this box, which contains absolutely nothing. We get the same Makita bag, a 40 volt charger, some instructions, the power head itself, and a 5 amp hour battery. In the bag we have the handle, strap, and resting bar. The design of the two units is pretty similar, with the most noticeable differences being the solid trigger and different mounting points for the shoulder strap. The 40 volt has a notch at the base, which is a nice touch for storage and is easily visible from underneath if you're having to look up high. The 36 volt unit has a single strap attachment point which rotates on the shaft. The 40 volt has front and rear mounting points and comes with this nicely branded fabric strap compared to a plastic one on the 36 volt. Unfortunately, there's no power indicator on either unit like we see on some other Makita tools, but it is easier to view the battery lights on the upright 40 volt system, and the groove in the battery is also a nice touch. The 40 volt charger has a much larger indicator light and is significantly easier to read at a glance. The 40 volt requires a quick press and you're ready to go. However, you only get a 4-second window of opportunity before you have to turn it back on again. The 36 volt requires you to hold the power button down for 2 seconds for the unit to turn on. However, it will remain active for a full minute before powering off, and importantly, that doesn't change if you've activated the safety. Once you activate the safety on the 40 volt, a 2-second window is all you get. From my original review, you'll know how much I love the electric brake on the 36 volt system. How good is that? Unfortunately, that component hasn't been transferred to the 40 volt power head, and the electric brake is noticeably slower when you're comparing the two, especially when you're using low resistance attachments like the line trimmer or edger. Looking at weight, and the 40 volt skin is 200 grams heavier at almost 3.5 kilograms or 7.6 pounds. But looking at the batteries, the 5 amp hour battery is massive, like hilariously massive. Two 5 amp hour 18 volt batteries come in at almost 1.2 kilograms or 41 ounces. And the 5 amp hour 40 volt battery weighs over 1.3 kilograms or 46 ounces for a 144 gram or 5 ounce weight increase. If we add the batteries to the power heads, the extra 200 grams becomes 330 grams or 11.6 ounces. As you can see when lifting them, the weight bias is also massively on the rear end with the 40 volt unit. But this did make me wonder, what would it be like with a 2.5 amp hour battery instead? At only 685 grams or 24 ounces, the 2.5 amp hour battery gets us under the weight of the 36 volt unit, while at 179 Australian dollars, hopefully still retaining that additional power. From a standing start on a branch from my black sapoti tree, the 36 volt unit got through 5mm and 7mm, but wouldn't make it through 11mm or 7/16 of an inch. The 40 volt had no issues with 11mm, but wouldn't get through 15mm or nearly 5/8 of an inch without a runner. It is worth noting that both units will cut the maximum 20mm branches once they get going. Moving to the newer pole saw attachment without adding any downward pressure, and the power advantage becomes very clear, cutting through this 190mm or 7.5 inch branch in an impressive 12 seconds. The 36 volt is 37% slower, getting through in 19 seconds instead. If we add almost 2 kilos of downward force, the 36 volt makes it almost halfway before stalling. The 40 volt, however, impressively improves its time by 40% down to 7 seconds. Very nice. 3.8 kilograms or 8 pounds of pressure though does prove a little too much. Testing the 2.5 amp hour battery, and thankfully we end up running the same time as the 40 volt 5 amp hour unit. If we add the same 1.8 kilos of weight, you can hear the 2.5 amp hour battery does start to struggle, but to its credit, is trying pretty hard not to stall. So close. Looking at the balance, and the 40 volt system with its counterweight 5 amp hour battery hanging off the back actually runs almost 400 grams or 14 ounces lighter at the cutting head, offering a little less downward pressure than the 36 volt power head. Comparing runtime, and I've headed back to the thick grass at the railway line so we can get real world usage of the units on high speed. Both 5 amp hour units were within 30 seconds of each other in around 11 minutes. I covered 90 square meters or 107 yards with the 40 volt and 96 square meters or 114 yards with the 36 volt. And at less than half the runtime for the 2.5 amp hour battery, I only covered 36 square meters or 43 yards on high speed. In reality, you'd have a brush cutter if this was the kind of work you were doing. So moving to some thinner coverage where we'd actually use a line trimmer on the low speed, and the runtime blows out to a whopping 40 minutes on the 40 volt 5 amp hour compared to half an hour on the 36 volt, and the 2.5 amp hour 40 volt battery gets a much more respectable 18 minutes of runtime. I'll admit, that's a lot longer than I thought they'd run, and I'd have used the shoulder straps if I thought I'd be standing in a paddock line trimming for an hour and a half straight. If we consider the charge time for each battery, none of the units charge faster than what you can deplete them. But after 40 minutes of line trimming, I was looking for a 6 to 10 minute break anyway. So, which one should you buy? There's no question that if you want the most power and will mainly use the pole saw, the 40 volt is the power head you want to get. It cuts up to twice as fast and has excellent runtime. Even though the specifications for both units have the same rotation speed, either Makita is underselling the 40 volt or the additional torque makes a substantial difference to its ability to maintain head speed, as it definitely sounds faster when you're using it. You get the point. Unfortunately, that's where the advantages of the 40 volt power head end. Yes, the controls are larger and easier to access, but since the 36 volt will stay on for a full minute rather than 2 seconds, you don't need to keep finding them anyway. Even something as basic as switching from edging to trimming or checking the battery is enough time that the unit will turn itself off and you'll be hunting for the controls again. It's also a lot heavier with the 5 amp hour battery, and all the weight hangs off the back of the tool. If you're using the hedge trimming attachment with the extension pole, you're just under 8.7 kilograms or 19 pounds of weight, which gets tiring pretty quickly if you're using it overhead. The biggest disappointment though is the electric brake, as that is one of my favourite features of the 36 volt power head. Bummer. So in the end, if you could use some extra 18 volt batteries and aren't looking to saw anything larger than normal pruning, the 36 volt would be my pick. But if you're looking to do a lot of cutting as quickly as possible, the 40 volt system is absolutely a step above in performance. Thanks for watching. Next up I'll be reviewing the EY403 and comparing it to the EY401. I'll also be comparing a $112 battery from AliExpress against the $279 genuine Makita unit. So please subscribe if you'd like to see that. I'd really appreciate it. Cheers. Who did this? Who did this to my GoPro? Did you find that interesting? Oh, that's your pick? What the hell? Got Milwaukee? Is that what it is? DeWalt?